Want to, you could watch it, or if you miss parts of it. I just thought that, hey, since I am answering questions on a regular basis, I might as well make sure that this information is recorded and saved and is now can be used by other people as well. So I am excited to host this session. It is going to be recorded. So if you come up to the stage, just know that I'm required by Clubhouse to let you know that I am recording you. And so if you are not okay being recorded, please maybe ping me on some other channels as well and ask a question that way, and I'm happy to answer it. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Nelly Yusupova. I'm a CTO and a startup tech advisor. I work with early stage entrepreneurs to help them really understand how to run their teams and projects efficiently. I work a lot with non-technical founders. I have an online training that I developed in 2012 that I call Tech Speak for Entrepreneurs. And in it, I teach my 10-step process for managing tech teams and projects, even if you're not technical. And there are some unique things that I teach that are really set this apart and help non-technical founders run their startups efficiently and effectively. I also teach classes on a lot of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. So if you are interested in learning more, come up, go to techspeak.co or visit the link in my bio. And that will take you to a lot of the classes that you can register for that are live, and you can learn more from me in that capacity as well. So techspeak.co or follow the link on my bio in any of my social channels. So let's get started. Before we bring people up to the stage, I want to kind of frame the conversation. One of the most frequently asked questions that I get from non-technical founders is, what do I need to do to run a successful tech startup? And there are two things that are really important in my mind from having taught this information for many, many years and mentored thousands of entrepreneurs who are in the early stages. There are two things that I found that consistently will make a big difference. Number one is being technically literate. So you don't need to be a coder. You don't need to learn how to code. It's a question that I get a lot from non-technical founders. Well, coding will not hurt you. And it's something that I think will actually help you if you have the time and the capacity to learn a new skill. But the problem with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially non-technical ones, to expect them to get to a point where they are going to be effectively creating something on their own is, to me, a big waste of time and essentially not something that I would focus on. The number one focus that you should have as a non-technical founder is actually getting technically literate. And what does that mean? So that means that you'll need to learn some fundamental technical concepts, that you'll need to know some of the what some of the tech jargon means. You'll need to understand what the best technical processes are and how to easily identify when things are going wrong. You need to understand how things work behind the scenes, what happens on the back end, what happens when you click on the buttons and in the browser, what happens on the back end, right? How all of that communication happens. Learn about all the different programming languages and how they work together. Understand APIs and databases and frameworks and third-party tools and no-code and low-code tools, and what goes on behind the scenes of your product, right? Once you understand all of those things, it will allow you to set the expectations in your mind and with your team on how things should work. It'll give you the confidence to have those conversations and ask the right questions, which is so important when you don't know what you don't know, right? You'll get the confidence to push back when a developer says it can be done or it can only be done a certain way. You'll get the confidence to control and negotiate how much time something should take and how much money it should cost. Having that knowledge is going to completely transform the way you see and make connections with technology. All of a sudden, things will make sense. You'll see things in the future that you wouldn't have been able to see before. And the confidence that you get from being technically literate is literally going to change how other technical people perceive you. You're going to be able to attract better technical people just because you're able to communicate with them much more effectively. So, being technically literate is an absolute necessity. It is not optional for non-technical founders who want to run a tech startup successfully to not be technically literate. And a lot of miscommunications, a lot of issues and horror stories that we hear about non-technical founders running tech startups is because they are not technically savvy. They don't know what they don't know. And oftentimes they're not there, or they don't have a process for actually catching the red flags, because the red flags are always there and you don't know the right questions to ask and how to really connect with technical people and manage them properly. So that's the first thing. And the second most important thing is having a process. And a process is one of those things that a lot of people, when they hear, they want to turn around and run. But a process, by definition, is something very simple. And we do this all the time to make ourselves more efficient. It's a repeatable way of consistently getting results over and over and over again. So think about your morning routine. You wake up, you do a certain set of things in a certain order to get out of the house in a most efficient way, right? That's a process. And a product development process will allow you to set the expectations for how your team needs to work, how they need to communicate, who needs to do what and when, right? And everything makes things easier when you have a really efficient process. And process is what I teach. A product development process is what I teach. That's what TechSpeak is all about. And in the workshops that I mentioned, in the webinars that I do, I just taught this morning a webinar on how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%. And in it, after quantifying all of the steps in the 10-step process that I teach, you could potentially save $121,000, right? Just based on very conservative assumptions. That's how important a really good and efficient process is. And for a lot of non-technical founders who always have questions, how do I really make sure that my tech person doesn't take advantage of me? And all of the fear-based questions that you have really come because you don't understand the process for managing teams and projects. And so the two core aspects of my process and the two core pillars are the lean way of building products and agile project management, right? They go really well hand in hand together. So let's dissect those a little bit, and we will start taking questions. So the lean way of building products is all about this whole concept of learn early, learn often, and learn cheap. Learning quickly is really, really important for any startup, right? To be able to move quickly, because every single data point that you have will inform your next decision. It's all about understanding what works, what doesn't work, what should we do more of, and do less of, right? All of that comes from learning. And being able to learn quickly is what the lean way of building products allows us to do. It is an iterative approach to product development. You talk to customers, you create your hypotheses, and it's basically a set of experiments that you're constantly running to see whether you are going in the right direction. And the smaller your experiments are, the faster you're iterating, the faster you're making decisions, the faster you're moving forward and really understanding, am I heading in the right direction? You don't want to spend a ton of time and money going in the wrong direction. So that's what the lean way of building products is. It's a way of being, it's a way of making decisions. It has to be a part of your culture. And every single product development process, a step that we will talk about, is actually using the lean way of building products. And agile project management allows us to break up big and unmanageable tasks and make them into more manageable chunks that can be completed earlier. A lot more people are familiar with the agile way of building products, right? Agile is a big set of principles and frameworks and practices that people can use. The problem that I see consistently with a lot of startups, even established ones, is that they are not trying to optimize their agile practices. So they come with a set of 2 or 3 tools that they use, and they think that that's agile. But agile is so much more. And for startups, it looks very different, right? For smaller teams, it looks very different than for larger teams. And so you really have to think about it flexibly and thinking, how do I optimize what we have for our smaller team versus our bigger team? And what I find is that a lot of people, when they, like if you were practicing agile, most people practice 2 week sprints. And so what that means is the release period that you have is 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks, you are launching new code to your customers. That's great, because what that means is instead of taking 3 months or 6 months or a year, which is generally what we practice in waterfall methodology, right? We are now cutting down our learning time to every 2 weeks. But if you want to be much more efficient and effective, I would encourage you to get to weekly launches and even multiple times a day launches. This is what's going to allow you to learn a lot faster and also minimize mistakes, because the smaller your release, the faster you're learning, the faster you're realizing, is this the correct hire? Am I following the right process? Am I doing the right things? All of these things will help you evolve as a company and really learn, are you building the right product? Are we serving our customers best? And it's not just something that you need to be doing in tech. It should be done all over your company, in your business development, in your sales and marketing, in all of the parts of your business. So the lean and agile way of building products is what I am a huge proponent on, and we'll talk a lot about it as we answer questions. And again, if you guys are interested in learning more, I would encourage you to go to techspeak.co and check out some of the classes that I offer. Next week, I'm doing 2 live webinars. One is called which one? So yes, how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder. And that's on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Thursday, we're doing how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%. And we'll literally break it down step by step. And I quantify the amount of money that you could be losing if you are skipping some of these steps that are really, really important. So if you have any questions or want to add to the conversation, please raise your hand. And I'm going to start bringing people up to the stage and answering questions. While we are doing that, I wanted to also bring up the issue of co-founders. So a lot of non-technical people are stuck because they need a technical person to be able to launch or build the product, right? And at TechSpeak, I have this whole concept that I teach called earning a technical co-founder, because the reality is oftentimes in the early days, it's really, really hard to find a technical person who can take a risk on your startup. A good technical person who wants to take a risk and work in a startup is probably already busy doing a startup with their own idea, or they're already working in a startup, right? So you have to convince other great technical people why they should take a risk on you and your idea by showing to them that you're not just an idea person, but that you can actually get stuff done, that you'll be able to deliver as a business person. And these other great technical people who are not already working on their own ideas, they don't have a problem earning a living in today's environment. In fact, they are getting paid thousands of dollars to be able to do the work that they do, right? So you are coming in with to them and saying, well, take a risk on my startup, forego all the time and opportunity costs that you have with them, and come join me. And I won't pay you, by the way, because I have no money, but I believe that this thing is going to succeed, right? And the more you take your idea from just an idea to a more established product with some traction, the more successful you're going to be at attracting or earning your technical co-founder, right? So there are three things that you can do that. Number one is to validate the idea and build a clickable prototype. This will demonstrate that there's a need and a demand for your product and that your idea is not just an idea. The second thing you can do is build a community and a following. And again, this will further demonstrate the need for your idea and also show that you have the marketing skills necessary to sell your product. Again, that you're not just an idea person. And finally, if necessary, outsource the building of the MVP. So this will demonstrate that you believe in the potential of the idea, that you have skin in the game, and that you can actually find a way to bring your idea to life no matter what. And doing these three things will allow you to get traction so you become much more attractive to a technical person. And it changes the conversation, right? And the pitch from, I need you to come help me build this product, to here's a great opportunity that you can be a part of. You can actually say, look what I've been able to do without you. Imagine what we can do together. So this is the power of this conversation shift. That is what we are all about. And this is the stuff that I'm teaching you to do so that you can take action every single day to make your idea a more real thing, more tangible thing. And the more traction you have, the more of an opportunity it is for a technical person to be able to jump on this and actually contribute to making your startup a success, right? So that's something that I would encourage you to do if you're just in the beginnings of your startup, to really think about, how am I going to earn this technical person? What am I going to do to take action every day to make sure that my technical person, when I start to pitch them, is actually going to say yes to me? So that's something that I wanted to highlight. If I don't see any people raising hands, and I am wondering if it is because I am recording the session and you don't want to come up to the stage because there is anonymity that might I guess how do I phrase this, that will allow you to become less anonymous. Uh, so if that's the case, ping me on in Clubhouse. Let me know, and also maybe ask your questions there as well. But if you do have a question, raise your hand. And let's see, I'm also using a new tool. So maybe there are raised hands, but I can't see them. I'm using Club Deck, which is an online version of Clubhouse, and the interface is very different than than what I'm used to on Clubhouse. So I don't see any raised hands, but maybe I'm looking in the wrong spot. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so there we go. Hendy. Handy is up. All right, so I found where the hand raising was. Handy, welcome to the stage. Please introduce yourself and ask your question. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you know what software is out there? So like from a competitor standpoint, is that really the question you're asking? Okay. So from a competitor standpoint, there is going to be a lot of competitors out there doing similar what you're doing. And this is it's a very interesting question because I think competitors validate the market that there is something that people are obviously seeking solutions around. One thing that I would encourage you to do is there's two types of market validation that you can do. Number one, like that initial search that you're doing to see that there is a problem, and also looking through to see some of the issues that people may have around the type of problem you want to you want to solve, and that the market is actually big enough for that. So that's the first step. But I think once you like the more valuable step, once you understand that the market is big enough, is to actually doing validation, like formal hypothesis driven testing and talking one on one to potential customers and really understanding the why and the how and some of the problems that they're trying to solve, and how other solutions on the market that they're using uh, are actually going to help them solve that. So in the problem with a lot of tools and like initial searches that you might do, they won't tell you enough information to actually make a judgment, like how big is this problem, is this really a painkiller, or is it just something that I'm complaining about. And so one thing that I would encourage you to do is to really think through how to do, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with customer development. This is something for a lot of you, a lot of the audience who are maybe not familiar with this. Is the lean? There's a book that you can read called The Lean Startup, and customer development is a concept that was created or popularized by Steve Blank. Those are all two people that are in the community that I would point you to. I also teach a lot of trainings around this topic as well, so you can check that out as a resource. But talking to customers and getting insightful feedback in a hypothesis driven way without leading the user to a solution, but really assessing how big are the pain points. Like the key in validation is to find a problem worth solving. A lot of people focus on the solution too much, and it's not enough to have a good solution, right? Like you really need to understand how to tailor that solution to directly solve customer problems. And that's what you're going to get from validation. And a lot of the tools, like if you're looking for software, you can just, I mean, besides Google searches, the only other resource that I could recommend is Product Hunt. This is where a lot of software startups launch, essentially. But to me, it's not enough. It's not enough to see what people are working on. You really need to be able to understand the pain points of your customers. And even if you want to play within exactly the same space of, let's say you have a competitor out in the market, maybe you see the problem in a different way. Maybe you want to solve it slightly differently, right? Maybe your approach is completely different. So a good example I like to use is email marketing tools. There's hundreds of them, probably thousands of them across the world, right? And they all exist and they have all customers, and some of them make a ton of money simply because it's a big problem to solve and everybody does it in a slightly different way. And so your ability to market that angle of it or what makes you uniquely qualified to solve that problem is what's going to make the biggest difference. So I don't know, Hendy, sorry, if that answers your question, but feel free to elaborate or comment. Hmm. Yeah, it's producthunt.com. That's where a lot of early stage entrepreneurs they launch new features and products, and that's where you can discover a lot of that information. You're welcome. Thank you for being the first one to raise your hand. That was that was great. All right, so Ashraf, welcome to the stage. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. Ashraf, we cannot hear you anymore. I see that you disappeared for a second and then you came back. So, but I cannot hear you anymore. So maybe you can try again. I don't know if you're still there. Okay. Arfan, if you're going to be destructive, I'm going to move you down to the audience. I don't know if that was an accident or not. There we go. Okay. Great. So, Ashraf, try again. I can hear you now. So I think your question was around protecting your intellectual property. And yes, and so how do you make sure that when you're working with technical people that they won't take the code or steal the code or use it in some way? Is that correct? So if I'm understanding you correctly, I'm a little bit unclear on the question. So I think you're saying that the business people can actually steal the idea as well. Is that correct? What's the concern here? Yeah. Okay. So the technical people can certainly steal your business, right? That's you can there's nothing that you can do to guarantee that no one will steal your business. But I think it very rarely happens, mainly because especially if you pick good reputable people to work with because they don't want to be known as the person or the company that steals ideas, especially if it's agencies, right? Agencies want to be able to build your product and they want to go on to the next customer. That is, they're like, that's what they're there for, and that's what they want to do. And so what I would encourage you to realize is that if you not everybody is going to want to steal your idea. And if they do, that it's not about the idea, it's about the execution. So you can give somebody 80% of the idea, 90% of the idea, and they still will not be able to make it a successful company, because it takes so many moving parts, and not just in the building the product, but marketing the product, positioning the product, selling it, doing business development, hiring the right people, and doing all of that perfectly, right? Finding the right business model. All of that is going to really determine how successful you're going to be as a company. So there's a difference between an idea and actually building a business. And so many people can copy your business, even if you're able to keep it stealth or whatever, right? People will copy your business. And if it's a good idea, that happens all the time. And I think the one thing that I teach my students at TechSpeak is you have to actually assume that 5 other people are working on exactly the same thing, but you have something, whether it's your team, some special sauce, some special knowledge, some special plan, that you're 10 steps ahead of the competition. And that even though they're copying you, you're already way ahead of them. So from that perspective, it's not about really stealing ideas, because ideas are just ideas and they will evolve. It's really about solving problems for customers and being focused on iteration and execution. And then I think you should be okay. But to underline that, you do really need to hire reputable, good people in order to not get into that situation to begin with. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to ask a follow-up. Yeah, and it's a great point. So basically, I'm just going to summarize what you said in slightly different words. Uh, so what you're saying is you want to be able to silo a lot of what developers are working on to be able to get you to um, to make sure that not one developer or a certain set of developers are seeing each other's code and seeing each other's work. So they essentially working on different parts of the code base. They're not seeing each other's work, so they don't see the complete picture. And yes, it's an okay strategy. It's a lot slower to move that way, because essentially one thing that I would encourage you to do is really think of your team as a team. And if you have this approach of I'm distrusting first versus trust first and catch mistakes earlier, it's going to be an uphill battle. You should never make decisions from a position of need or fear or distrust, because your job as an entrepreneur is find quality people and minimize mistakes, right? So um, maybe you bring on a new hire and you don't give them access to the full project until they've worked there for a little while and gotten a chance to test them. But ultimately, at some point you'll need to trust people, and as an organization, if you ever want to become a big company, you need to be able to build teams and trust people and get to a point where this is not even a question. You have to have a really good hiring process and the testing process, and put people strategically on different projects or different parts of the project so that they can become productive and learn and show that they could actually uh, move your company forward, help you get there faster, etc. But if you have a distrust first kind of approach to your team, it's going to slow you down dramatically, and I don't think it's productive. I personally do the opposite, and it works in my favor. It doesn't mean that I haven't never hired a bad person, which is why I always talk to entrepreneurs and say, no matter how good your process is, your hiring process, your product development process, your any type of process that you have in your startup, it's all about being in tune with what's going on so you can be in a position to see the red flags, to address them early and often before they become giant problems. That's how you manage teams properly. That's how you manage a team that is empowered and is actually going to stick with you for the long term. If you have this distrust type of approach, you will maybe be able to get short-term hires who are freelancers, but they're not going to stay with you for a long time. And so, depending on your goal, this approach may or may not work. But I have seen this strategy being used in different startups. In fact, I used it in some of my clients' work because there was a specific issue with something very proprietary, right? And so we strategically made sure that certain types of people didn't see the rest of the application because there was a conflict of interest. But we still needed that specific expertise. So you can deploy that, but we didn't do that because we didn't trust the developer. It was just a conflict of interest, and there could have been a a problem with them competing with the idea too soon. Okay, so Ashraf, hopefully that helps. You are welcome. I'm going to quickly reset the room for a lot of you who are just joining us. Welcome to today's session. I'm a CTO and a startup tech advisor. And if you are interested in diving into a lot of these topics, I have classes and workshops that you can find online at techspeak.co. Just go to the website and click on classes at the top of the navigation bar, and join me for a webinar next week. Next week, I'm doing how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder and all the things you need to do to actually move forward, earning a technical co-founder, and the exact process you should be using to be able to manage your teams effectively. That's happening on Wednesday, and on Thursday, I am doing a webinar on how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%. And that will really help you realize how much you can, by focusing on optimizing your current process and how you release code and how you manage teams, can actually extend your startup's runway. So you don't have to get more money or raise more money to be able to move forward, right? This is such a freeing concept for a lot of founders. So if you're interested, check those out. And then we'll keep going with answering questions. Daniel, welcome to the stage. Daniel, I don't know if you're there. Maybe you stepped away. If you're trying to speak, please unmute yourself in the bottom right corner of your phone. And if you're not there, we will go to Zeno and then come back to you. Okay, so it seems like he might have stepped away. Zeno, are you there? Hi there. Okay, so I'm answering questions for non-tech founders running a tech startup. If you have any questions, feel free to chime in. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to paraphrase the question just for everybody else. If you are bringing on a new hire, is there a way, or how do you basically make sure that you can test them without sharing all of the code with them initially? And the best way to test, I mean, it all depends on how your code is structured. If it's all one code base, which we call a monolith, it's very hard to only share parts of the code with them, right? Because it's all in one code base. If it is written in what we call microservices, then you are able to only give them a piece of the functionality without having them access to anything. And if you really want to be able to test people without giving them access, let's say you have a monolith, one big code base for everything, I think the best way to do it is to give them a totally separate project that is not connected to what you're working on. Maybe it's a new thing that they can write that's really not connected to anything that you have written already. Ideally, you want to be able to do that ahead of time, right? Meaning before you hire them. Sometimes there are some people who actually won't hire a full-time employee until they've tested and vetted them for 2-3 months. So depending on what your strategy is, you can give them a separate project. But ultimately, I think giving people the benefit of the doubt, right? Like there's no way somebody can look at your code in the first 2 weeks of them joining you and like knowing everything about it. It's just not realistic, and it's not something that I worry about. And I just think that like I would encourage all of you guys to start your relationships with a trust first approach. You have to trust the people that you hire. Otherwise, it's going to be like not a pleasant experience for you. You should know, right? Like before you hire them, you should already have the trust factor and then give them the benefit of the doubt and watch them, right? Watch for red flags. Watch them for all kinds of things like that would make them look like they're out there doing something that they weren't supposed to do. But ultimately, people want to be successful, and if you should be able to uncover as much as you can before you hire them. Okay, so you have to have a really good hiring process to begin with, and so by the time they're already working for you, you already know that, and so you already have some trust with them, and then your job is to find, like, not look for it, right, but look for red flags. when they're presented, address them really quickly before they become big giant problems. If they need the help and the support initially, make sure you have a really good onboarding experience so they really understand that. But like imagine you're coming into a new company and they have this I don't trust you approach. They don't give you access to the code. They treat you like you're a secondhand citizen, right? Like, is that going to be a good experience? Like, would you want to work for that company? No, right?
Integrate WhatsApp API with some code and all that. So, is there any way that we cannot show him the plan to build an API like for the WhatsApp? We have to connect WhatsApp with the log. So, what that we can share it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything. Again, it depends on how your code is structured, right? If it's a one big code base, you can't hide anything from people because it's on the version control system. Yeah, unless I'm not aware of it, I don't know of any tool that would allow you to do that. If somebody knows, raise your hand and come up and share as well. But I don't have like honestly I've never come to this type of situation because as I mentioned, I do a lot of um, very diligent interviews way before that. I do code tests, take home exams or assessments, right? And then by the time I hire them, I'm very confident that they are going to be the person that I want to work with, right? So I give them the benefit of the doubt, and then if they don't perform, I have the right to do something. But it's ultimately it's just again, I would encourage you to approach it from we're going to trust this person unless we see some red flags.
One last question, like, what do you think is strategy if startups have limited budget, like very limited budget, and they just want to hire like $1,000, but also want to build an MVP and also want to like raise the hope or and they don't have any view but they understand that the goal, but they are not the goal is built. What strategy would they small startup or just the startup with that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Zeno, and I'm going to mute you just because we're getting feedback from each other. Um, so it's the topic of interns is very interesting to me because a lot of people think that hey, we can hire interns and save money on that. The problem is you can't really count on interns to solve really difficult problems and have enough experience. Yes, they may know how to write code, but they don't have experience of actually running a team. And so somebody has to manage them. So if you have a really good way of managing somebody really effectively, and so they know exactly what to do, and somebody can check them, right? That's when interns can work. Personally, I always pair up interns with a senior developer, someone who can guide them and teach them in exchange for you getting, cheap labor, right? Because it's unfair for you to hire an intern and not pay them or pay them very little and put a lot of pressure on them to perform as though they were a full-time employee. It's unfair, and I don't think uh, it should be expected. So right? Like so, that's the way I look at it. If you so let me just finish that point, and then I'm happy to do that. Um, so I just wanted to make sure that you really understand that interns need guidance and support, and if you are able to pair them up with one experienced person that manages all the interns and does code reviews and all these other practices that are important, then you could be successful. But I haven't seen uh, startups use that strategy successful without in any other way with just interns. Somebody wanted to add a comment on that. Was that Daniel? Oh, Ikena. So it can. Maybe I'm going because this is a room for non-technical founders. I think your conversation is going to be not necessarily relevant specifically to Xena. Yeah, so maybe you guys can connect directly and answer that question. And then I'm happy, I'm glad that you were able to jump in and help him. But I think you guys should just connect directly that way. Yeah, so a really important process, and it can, thank you for muting yourself because there's a feedback. A really, I do a lot of steps when I'm doing hiring. The very first thing is to really understand who you're hiring and what you're hiring for, right? Because there's so many people uh, who don't even understand who they need to hire, what the team structure is going to be. And so, are you hiring a co-founder or a CTO or a senior developer or even an intern? Right, all of those will have different implications and what different expectations you might have from them. Ultimately, there's two parts to the interview. The most important for me is a cultural fit. I earlier mentioned that there is a um, this learn early, learn often, learn cheap mindset that I have, right? And that becomes a part of my culture. And I hire everybody against that. So that is the number one thing that I look for when it comes to hiring anyone, whether they're technical or not. And so I have a DNA structure culture for my company. I have DNA features and functional features, features and functionalities, not for people, DNA qualities for people. And based on that, I make a determination: is this going to be a right cultural fit for my company. Especially, this is especially true if you're hiring senior level people, because they are the people who are going to be responsible for hiring more people. And this is the only way for you to scale your culture, right? So being intentionally and hiring for culture is really important to me, and what I would encourage entrepreneurs doing from day one. And that will set a set of things and in motion for, is this person the right hire, is this person going to be a good hire long term versus short term, and certain things that I look for. And then the second part is the technical interview. So if you are, I'm assuming you're going to be hiring a technical person, you need to conduct and make sure that they actually have the skills and to do what they want to do for you and what you're hiring them for. So that's really important as well. But it's a two-step process. For me, I optimize for culture fit first, because I can always teach people skills. And especially in startups, skills become irrelevant very quickly in tech. So many things need to be done, and you have a lot more responsibilities than in a big company. So knowing and being an expert in one thing is not necessarily the only thing I look for. I look for people who are learners, people who love to grow and with the company, right? And like become the CEO almost of whatever work they end up doing. Those are the types of people I like to work with. And so I look for that very specifically. Great question. So that's that. The DNA qualities are things like loving to learn, right? Being a good communicator, is an optimist, is a person who will try to figure it out no matter what, right? Will do the job done despite the fact it's not their job, right? Those are all DNA qualities of people that I look for. So I first make a list of those things, and then I try to devise questions, and that will allow me to find out, do they have those qualities. And oftentimes it's very sneaky questions where you are um, you're trying to get them to tell you stories of different situations where they've done that. And it's not very like something that I can say, oh, these are the 5 questions you should be asking all of your employees. It doesn't work that way, because depending on the qualities you look for, you want to be able to get them to tell you stories or instances in their career where they've done that and demonstrated that. And so those are the types of things that are very hard to fake as well, because past success being in a company, you could say, I did this. And, is it because you did something specifically, or is it because you were at the right time at the right place with the right people? Right. So those are very specifically designed questions that I have for each person that I look for. Uh, so it'll be different for a CTO versus a co-founder versus a senior developer versus a junior developer, right? All of those will have some overlaps, but there are certain things and expectations that I would have from a CTO, for example, that I wouldn't necessarily have from a senior developer. There's a YouTube video that I have online on the 6 qualities that a CTO should have. So if you're interested in that, those are the 6 qualities that I look for in CTOs. And it's really important to understand who you're looking for, and then very strategically design the questions around the types of qualities that will help you see and get them demonstrated basically through the answers that they give you. You are welcome. And actually, we went a little bit out of order. So let me do a pull to refresh. And we have Daniel. I don't know, Daniel, if you're back. I saw you unmute your mic before. If you're there,
Yeah, yeah.
hey, Daniel, welcome. Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. This sixth idea that I have, and I've been struggling to get a partner for some time now. What usually happens is that I get somebody to recommend somebody who is very good, who can help me. And then on our first meeting, we'd have to talk about how he comes in. So it becomes difficult because I was finding it difficult to know whether I should hire him or I should bring him on board as a partner. So my struggle has been always thinking because I'm a starter and mine is usually the idea and how to sell it and have a good story to sell the idea that I have, and it's going to solve a very big problem for the larger constituents of what I was trying to look at. So when I laid everything before him, he was curious to know exactly what we are supposed to be looking at. And during the conversation, I realized that I'm supposed to have given almost most of the most important part of my business to him in order for him to complete the journey. But whilst I was doing that, I have fears that if he gets to understand the core of the kind of solution that I was trying to come up with, he will end up running with the idea without doing it together with me. Now, the problem I found with that conversation was that he was asking questions that since he's a tech guy, everything was kind of surrounded around him because the idea is a tech idea, and because I am just on the management side trying to see how best to sell it, he thought that his contributions were going to be way bigger than what I was bringing on board. So, with this kind of concept, how do I draw a good line between finding the right person and having the right decision going on? And because of this non-disclosure agreement that you're supposed to have, you end up exchanging a lot of information. That's if you don't start the idea from the beginning, then it means that I, with the concept, would have lost somehow because we have left with the idea that that he could start because of his background as a tech guy. So how do you manage this kind of negotiations?
It is such a great question, Danielle. And we kind of alluded to some of the answers with somebody else previously, where it was, it's really not about the ideas. And I know, Danielle, it seems that way to you because you, like, it's your baby, you want to protect it, right? But even if your technical person, let's say he steals it, he needs to be able to find someone and build a team around it to make it successful. It is not just about building the product. It is not about just building a product. It's about finding a way to sell it in a way that makes sense, right? Finding the business model, really iterating on the product over and over and over again. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 to 5 to 6 years to make something successful, right? To build a company takes time. It takes effort. It takes a team. It takes money. It takes time. And someone at the beginning taking your idea, if they are able to run with it and make it successful, more power to them, because you need to bring something to the table. And the reason why I believe this is a fear-based question is because you ultimately don't feel like you bring contribution to this idea, right? To you, it's a tech idea. So and so you think that what he brings to the table is more important than what you bring to the table. And in fact, what you bring to the table is just as important. With a brilliant product, if you're not able to sell it, if you're not able to market it, if you're not able to position it properly in front of the right audience at the right time, all of that stuff, right? And being able to build being the CEO, right? You building a team and the right environment, the right culture, all of those things are your responsibility. So you two need to look at yourself as partners. And if you don't feel that way, you're not ready to commit to that relationship. To me, way too many people say yes to a co founder relationship way too soon. Just like you wouldn't ask someone that you just met to marry you, you shouldn't ask someone that you just met to become your co founder. Because the feelings that you're feeling are as a result of you not having enough trust with this person. And so, what I would encourage you to do is figure out how you can maybe work with them on a parallel project, on something else to make sure that you guys are a good fit. So, we talked about cultural fit with Akina just now. Finding a co-founder is not just about aligning yourself on skill set. It's about so much more. It's about making sure that you work well together. You have the same vision for the company, how you want to grow it. Do you solve really difficult problems well together? Are you able to communicate effectively? Do you lift each other up? Like all of these things, the soft things for how to act. Like you could potentially spend 5 to 7 or more years with this person. You're going to be spending more years with this person, more time with this person than probably your wife or your kids, right? Because you work a lot more than you spend at home. So like I believe you haven't spent enough time with this person if you're asking this question. Because if you found a true partner, you would have so much trust in each other, and you would see that the two of you together can make this more successfully, a lot more and a lot faster than the two of you apart. And that's the way I want you to look at this, and not look at it as this person is more valuable. It's a tech product, etc., etc.
Yeah, my biggest challenge has been that I've spoken to three tech guys, and all of them were asking for details, which I somehow gave. I was waiting for them to return back. Well, some of them even shared the same kind of ideas that I had with me because they were adding up to the idea. So sometimes we end up with a very fruitful meeting, and I'll be waiting for a good response, and then nothing comes up. So I'm kind of tied down to know exactly what to do, whether to now go and look for funds and now employ a developer myself, and then see how I could steer the ship to see if they could build exactly what I'm thinking in my head. Or I could still keep going and keep searching for a co-founder. Because if somebody co-founds this with me who has a tech background, I think we won't be able to fight the battles ahead better than having an employee. And being a startup, I don't have the capital to pay for services of a professional. So the idea that you gave to me came out that you could find the idea that people would love to partner to test and then give them roles to play and all that. Sometimes you end up not getting the best for the project that you want. So in this kind of dilemma, what do I do? Do I go the hard way, going to look for funds, which I know is difficult to do, and now employ a developer, or I should keep searching. And now, the more I search, it means that I have to keep sending the idea to people until they are ready to come on board.
Yeah, and it's a very difficult decision, but it's actually also a very simple decision. Number one, I think there are very few investors who will fund you with just an idea. That's just reality, especially if you are a first-time founder. And so you might actually benefit a lot from the classes that I teach on how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder. It's a webinar that I'm doing live next Wednesday. So check that out at techspeak.co or in my profile. There, the concept and the reality that I teach of earning a technical co-founder, I think is going to be very relevant to you. The reason why you start the conversation, and once people find that, hey, you're just in an idea stage, you become very unattractive to them, because a lot of technical people who are good, they get a pick of a lot of different opportunities and they get pitched a ton from every founder who thinks that their idea is the best one on the planet, is the next unicorn, right? So they get bombarded with a lot of requests, and they're also in a position where they can make a lot of money going working to work for a big company. So unless you present your idea as an opportunity, chances of anyone taking a risk on your idea just in the idea stage are just very slim. That's just reality. And the reason why I started teaching earning a technical co-founder concept is because I have worked with thousands of entrepreneurs in your situation, and they were all having a hard time getting a technical co-founder. So what I would encourage you to do is, as much as you can, figure out how to validate your idea, build a clickable prototype. Those two steps, and like if you jump on the webinar, you'll learn all of this, right? I teach a 10-step process. In the first 10 steps in my 10-step process are completely non-technical. Like, you need to be able to find the problem, define it really well, build a clickable prototype, then refine the solution. Those two things require no technical expertise, but will already get you a little bit closer to being just an idea to this is what I'm building, right? You don't have to share your secret sauce there, but you are doing work every single day to be able to get you there. And the third piece is to maybe invest some of your own money to build the MVP. And a lot of the strategies that I teach you is actually like building the MVP shouldn't cost you a ton of money, right? But it will show you, if you are putting a little bit of your own money to build your MVPs to show, so that you can start to build traction and onboard customers as soon as you have an MVP, because you found a problem so big, right? Such a big pain point for someone to directly solve that solution, then you are now at a point where you're making a decision. Okay, so I've put in a little bit of money. It didn't cost me a ton of time and money to be able to launch this. I know how to manage this team effectively, so I'm not going to lose thousands of dollars. I'm not going to be one of those horror stories of outsourcing, right? Because if you learn how to do this properly, it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. And once you are able to do those three things, and also building a community is another piece that you can do as a non-technical founder. All of these things will showcase that you're not just an either idea person. And that will give you a lot more power to negotiate and become more attractive to a technical person, because it's now an opportunity. It's not, I need you to come work with me at a company. Because think about your pitch. You're saying, I will not pay you any money. I want you to work for free for the next 3 to 5 years, right? On this idea, I want you to take all of the risk, come to work on my startup, give up all the time and opportunity costs that you currently have, and just take a risk on me. When people ask me that, my first answer is, why would I? Why should I? Right? And you need to give them a reason why they need to do that. And so if you follow this strategy and actually take the steps to becoming to getting traction, you're not only going to become more attractive to technical people and potential partners, you're going to become more attractive to investors as well. So if your goal is to raise money at some point, you need to be able to also prove to investors that you have something here, that you're not just an idea. Because the reality with investors as well is that they're not going to invest in you if you're just in the idea stage. So just some food for thought there for you, Daniel. Hopefully that helps.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. But one last thing. I was just thinking, my last decision was to think about, like, in building a prototype, I need to convince people to know that this idea is good enough to sell. So I decided to see if I could learn.
No, and I'm not saying learn how to code. When I say build a prototype, first you build a clickable prototype, right? And then the second thing is you can actually hire someone either really inexpensively to build something in a lot of no code or low code tools, and or you can hire someone to build a solution. Like some of the solutions that you can come up with actually do not require any technical things, right? Like it's not about technology, but really being scrappy and understanding, because the most important thing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs lack is really having a clear understanding of the problem that they're solving for the customer, because your MVP needs to be it needs to be a solution that someone is ready to pay for right off the bat, right? That's the type of business you need to look for. The definition of an MVP, it stands for minimal viable product, or is something, right? It's a set of features and functionalities that will still provide value to our customers. The minimal set of features and functionalities that will still provide value to your customers. So it doesn't, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a full-fledged product with tons of bells and whistles. It's going to be something that solves a core problem for someone. Okay. And it could only have one feature, because in your validation step you found that if I had this one thing and I did it really well and I solved this specific problem for people, they would be willing to pay me money and time to actually use my product. And sometimes, we think it has to be a tech solution, but sometimes it may not be. Maybe you can do, like, I know so many entrepreneurs who did things manually, right? They used some no code tools and on the front end, and they did the entire thing on the back end completely manually because it was possible. But what that allowed them to do is to actually prove that this problem needs to exist in the world. And then here's the thing that is brilliant that happens. Once you're able to build an MVP, as a non-technical founder, you can then decide, do I really need a technical co-founder, or should I hire a senior developer that can grow into a CTO and give them less of my company? Right? So it gives you so many more options to move forward if you strategically get the confidence to know, like, how do I get this into an actionable thing that people can use as quickly as possible? Okay? Great. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about this approach, again, I would encourage you to jump on a webinar that I'm doing next Wednesday on how to build an MVP without a technical co founder, because it will completely shift the way you're probably thinking about building a tech startup and moving forward as a non technical founder. Because all of you who don't have a technical person to help you move forward will run into this problem, and you need to figure out a path forward, moving forward every single day, taking action towards getting more traction in whatever way possible every single day. And that's really what's going to help you get there faster and actually earn a technical co-founder and or CTO, or like a technical person who will come and work with you to then help you take it to the next level. Akina, I see that you're unmuted. Did you want to add something? Sure. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I didn't realize I was unmuted. I said sure. Yeah, thank you, Akina. And really, Daniel, just to close out this point, the pitch should be, look what I've been able to do without you. Imagine what we can do together. Right? That's the power of what I'm telling you to do. Because if you're able to position things that way, you're doing it with confidence, and people would be like, wow, I want to work with this guy, right? Versus there's going to be a power struggle. But the technical person always needs a non-technical person, in general, because they lack that side of the skill set as well. And so if you're able to find someone who you click with and build that trust with, and really connect on the goals and the mission and the vision and how you want to grow the company, all of these things that I mentioned already, it's going to be so much easier. It's going to be you need to be looking for that person, but need to understand that it's the long-term strategy. It's going to take a while, just like finding a life partner, right? You decide that you want to get married or whatever. It may take you sometimes a few years to find somebody that you click with, that you want to spend the rest of your life with. And the same thing happens with a co-founder. It takes time to find someone and actually build that deep relationship with someone. And I've seen people work with and hire people. A great example is actually the Ryan Singer from Basecamp. I heard him on Clubhouse, and he shared that he and his co-founder were not co-founders for 5 years. In fact, he was a technical person and he was a non-technical person. His co-founder, sorry, was a technical person, and he paid him for 5 years before he decided to make him a co-founder. And that was like, wow, like that's how long it takes, right? It took them 5 years to make a decision that, hey, you've been contributing to this business so much, treating it as though it's your business without you having the co-founder title. That's really how long it took them. For everybody, it takes a long time or a different amount of time. But I think really strategically not rushing into that decision. In fact, the number one reason why a lot of startups fail or never take off the ground is because of co-founder relationships falling apart. And you don't want to be that statistic, right? You want to be able to take your time, figure out how to build your product, even without a technical person. All along the way, you need to go out and put yourself in a position so you can meet that person, right? And build those relationships. You never know where they're going to turn into. They may become your technical advisor. They may become your potential partner. All of these things, you never know, right? It's all based on relationships, but really understanding that you need to take your time and make these decisions from a position of power and intentionality rather than a position of need. Because if someone walks away, is not interested, it doesn't take away from your idea. It doesn't mean that they're going to take it and run with it, because oftentimes they lack, as Akina said, a lot of insights as to what makes that idea unique. And oftentimes the reason why you saw it is because you have some kind of secret sauce, some power, some knowledge that they can't easily copy. And so don't worry about that. Share it with as many people as possible, and find the right partner over time. But in the meantime, take action every single day towards making your idea a reality. Okay. So hopefully that is helpful. And let's go to now Parth, and then Costanza, and then we will close down the room for the day. Parth, welcome to the stage. You are welcome. Oh, sorry, I was unmuted. You're welcome, Parth. Thanks for coming up to the stage. All right, so let's go to Constanza for the last question. Hopefully, I pronounced your name correctly. Welcome to the stage. So, are you? So, you're asking if you should present yourself as non-technical, Constanza? Yeah, and so and what's your role? So I know you're designing the games. Are you a co-founder or what's your role there? Yeah, and titles are actually honestly are not important in in my opinion, especially in the beginning when actually there's not really anything in there that to make things real, right? So in the beginning, you need to establish like what's going to be your role and what's going to be your responsibility, and based on that, you kind of get a title. But what you'll find is that you will very quickly outgrow those titles as you start to hire people. You know, technical co-founder just means that they are going to be the kind of the default person in charge of deciding the tech. And if you're, this is one thing that I think you really should understand from your standpoint, like what role do you want to play? And if you are building games in one set of technology stack and this web developer comes in and says, well, we need to do it in JavaScript, is he right? Is there a is that the better approach, right? And so being able to discuss that and make a decision as a team is what you should be able to, like as co-founders, right? You should be able to really do well. Otherwise, you're constantly going to be arguing, stepping on each other's toes, and ultimately being counterproductive as a team rather than lifting each other up. And I've seen this happen so many times where co-founders come together, they just met each other, they don't really know each other really well. They don't set clear expectations and roles and responsibilities of this is what we kind of will do, right? In a startup, everybody does everything, but there should be a very clear responsibility of like who makes decisions if we need to do this and how we're going to make decisions effectively. That's all part of the process of running a startup, right? And you guys need to all work it out. And if you are feeling a little bit out of, like, maybe either pushed out or overlooked, it's something you need to uh, say right now and voice right now before it gets to be a big thing. So I think in general, you should also understand, what do you want to do? How do you see your role and what do you bring to the company? And go from there, because it sounds like you guys are coming in, and just even based on the tone and the voice and the way you ask the question tells me that there's something off here, right? Like, I'm getting a ton of red flags about the relationship and how you described it. So when you are speaking and when you're in tune with your co-founders, you always say, we do this, we decided this, we do, like, it's a team, right? You kind of feel that right away when you're happy, versus this person comes in and they tell me to do this and now I'm not sure, and you're kind of not sure where you fit in. That's not a good place to be in. And so all of these things you should encourage your potential co-founders to work through and really define, because I see a lot of co-founder relationships and companies fall away at this stage simply because this wasn't done early enough in the startup process. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You could have three technical people running, right? Like, it doesn't matter who it is. You just need to be able to build the company. Right? But if, let's say, you have three technical people, somebody has to play the CEO role. Right? Like, so it's about dividing the roles and the responsibilities. Three technical people are great if you're building some, like, super deep technical solution, but still somebody still has to build the UI, interface with customers, sell the thing, right? Go out and raise money. All of these things and are responsibilities of somebody's. All right, like, you guys have to be talking about it and making sure that everybody's clear on who's going to be doing what work. Well, the problem is, here's, and this is a lesson for a lot of people who are listening in. It's not always good to just say, okay, I'm going to learn a new thing, right? I think it's good that you're learning it, but if you're learning it for the wrong reasons and you actually haven't made the case that, hey, maybe we should be using this approach, that's actually a bad thing for the company. So whether you're technical, whether you're not technical, uh, being able to communicate clearly and being able to negotiate and connect and talk through issues is your job as an entrepreneur, as a co-founder, as a part of a team. If you have something on your mind, it needs to be said, and your culture needs to encourage that. And so, you being one of the co-founders, you really need to live that and breathe that, and you guys need to set that culture. And you kind of took the default role of, okay, I'm going to learn JavaScript, but maybe that wasn't the right thing. I don't know, right? I'm not intimately familiar with what you guys are building and how and all that, the pros and cons. But if you just accepted that without really having a discussion, that's a problem to me. You are welcome. All right. Yes, I indeed have been a part of a lot of good stories and a lot of horror stories. And so a lot of the things that I teach and advice that I preach essentially from a lot of experience of making my own mistakes over the years, right? I started my career as a CTO in my 20s, and obviously I didn't know anything about being a CTO at that time. I was a developer who learned everything on the job and made a ton of mistakes. And so a lot of the things that I teach now and a lot of the processes that I teach now are things that came from actual iterations of doing this and trying this and doing this with my team, and it didn't work. And all of these things, trust and communication and setting up a step-by-step process for people to do things, happened as a result of me actually being there and doing that. And then when I started working with startups, it's just, I just got exposed to a lot more of the same stuff. And so everybody faces the same issues. And so, a lot of these things you can learn from other people's experiences. And there's no reason for anybody to make the same mistake twice, right? So if you guys, again, are interested in learning more, jump on some of the webinars that I teach every week. Learn and borrow the process, use it, adjust it to your startup, but really start to be consciously making decisions on how you're going to do something rather than being pushed around and kind of ending up somewhere, right? Being intentional about how you do things and why you do things is really, really important. So I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. So on next week, I'm doing this room again on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And for those of you who would like to join me at one of my webinars, that'll be on Wednesday, how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder. And on Thursday, how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%. So this is a webinar geared towards a lot of entrepreneurs who already have teams and have a process and want to focus on optimizing their process so they can learn, save thousands of dollars and actually extend their startup's runway because they're not now wasting a lot of money to mistakes and inefficiencies. So I look forward to staying in touch with you again. This hopefully the streaming recorded this session. So if you want to go back and re-listen to some of the advice or some things, feel free to do that. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great afternoon. Yep. Absolutely. Yes. I have a very international audience. I have people joining us from all over the world, including Australia and New Zealand and all over, and Africa and Germany and all that. So I try to do it early in the morning, Pacific Standard Time, so a lot of people can join in. So I look forward to seeing some of you there, and have a great afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are in the world. I will talk to you guys soon.